If you want to beat the Steelers this week in NFL Week 12, then like today's video right now. Yeah, there's no Joe Burrow, but nothing would be nicer around Thanksgiving, beyond the food and the family, than taking down the Steelers in Cincinnati. So like that video if it's what you want. The Bengals hosting the Pittsburgh Steelers. No Joe Burrow in this one. And despite that, only 1-point underdogs, which is maybe a bit of a surprising line, which always makes me think Vegas knows something. They know even at home without Joe Burrow, this is not that good of a Steelers team. Pittsburgh's 6-4 record is wildly deceptive. They are not a 2-game above 500 team. That's not how good they actually are. Their offense has been putrid all season long. It's why they fired offensive coordinator Matt Canada earlier this week. Their defense, however, is very good. That's why the over-under in this game sits at 34.5 points. Shockingly low figure for an NFL football game. You're talking a very low-scoring affair. A lot of punts likely involved in this one. We're going to preview the entire game, some injury news, and some rumors kind of mixed in on this front here. First up, the last 5 games these teams have played. The Bengals were getting hot at the right time, right? They beat the Seahawks. They beat the Niners. They beat the Bills. They beat the Cardinals before that. Painful loss against Houston. You know what? That stinks. That's okay. Then they lose Joe Burrow for the season in a loss against the Ravens, drastically impacting their outlooks. Meanwhile, the Steelers, 7-point win over the Rams, a 10-point loss over Jacksonville, a 4-point win over both Tennessee and Green Bay, and then a 3-point loss against the Cleveland Browns. To put this in perspective, folks, the Steelers have been outgained in every single football game this year. We're 10 games in, and they have yet to get more yards than the opposing team. It's been self-inflicted wounds on the opposite team and a potent Steelers defense having great success. That's why even with Jake Browning starting, the Bengals absolutely can win this football game. So who you got winning in this one? B for the Bengals, S for the Steelers. It's the pinned comment of today's video. So if the ad comes here on YouTube, take advantage of it. Head down there and let me know. Let's talk some injury news here for Cincinnati. The 4 big-ish names, 3 big ones for sure. First up is T. Higgins. Now, as we film this, practice ongoing just down the street from us in Cincinnati, Higgins was not dressed for the open portion of practice. Zac Taylor had said he had hoped he was going to be out there, thought he'd be out there. I think Taylor's comments might have been more for the week and less so on Wednesday. Not the best sign. He was out there in cleats, jogged up the hill because Bengals practice is weird and they got to go up the hill to get on the practice field. That's besides the point. So still very much uncertain if Higgins will return this week against Pittsburgh. Some good news now for Sam Hubbard. He did return to practice. Even if this ends up being just a limited situation, limited on Wednesday often means you're playing, barring a setback, on Sunday. So really good news there on Sam Hubbard. The Bengals have missed him on defense. Pittsburgh's going to try to run the ball. You'll see a lot of Jalen Warren and Najee Harris. Hubbard being out there, in theory, would be a big deal. Andrei Iosivas has also said he'll be able to play. He was at practice coming back from his own knee injury. So at minimum, you should have some better wide receiver depth than we'll have to call up Shed Jackson from the practice squad and burn a timeout because he doesn't know where to line up or whatever. So TBD on Higgins. Good news there on Andrei Iosivas, a.k.a. Yoshi, and then still maybe not great news on Cam Taylor-Britt. He wasn't dressed for practice today, the open portion again. I would expect the DNP on that front, maybe limited if you're lucky in some capacity. Quad issue there for CTB, been bothering him for a while. Thursday's the big day for him and T. Higgins. If they're out there in any capacity, good chance they play. Otherwise, it gets really unlikely. So what is your confidence level? And be honest with me. In the Bengals beating the Pittsburgh Steelers. Scale it from 1 to 10. 1, of course, the low end. 10, the high end. Stock keys to victory here. Number 1, the defense simply must carry this football team. There's no way around it. This has got to be a team that leans incredibly hard on their defense moving forward, and they get better results than what they've had for too often this season. They get one of the worst starting quarterbacks in the NFL, at least from a statistical perspective, 10 games played, we've got 6 touchdowns and 4 interceptions. We're completing 60.5% of our passes. We have yet to get to 2,000 passing yards. We are 10 games in. That is really bad. And look, that's why the coordinator got fired. The offense certainly deserves some blame there. And the numbers you're about to see, for some of these aren't really, ignoring the context of the offense. EPA per play I'm a big fan of that as a metric, expected points added. But if the supporting cast is really bad, it will negatively bring down the EPA per play. And the coordinator gets plenty of blame there as well, with Matt Canada now being fired. But Pickett is 28th in everything. EPA per play, negative points added. Success rate, was your play, successful in keeping the drive alive? 28th. QBR, 28th. He has not been good this year. And frankly, the offensive coordinator change might not be enough in Pittsburgh. Maybe it gives them a spark that they need. Maybe they'll finally feed George Pickens on just straight go balls and comeback routes. And Pittsburgh can run the football, and that's an issue for this Bengals team, although hopefully Hubbard's return helps them. But this is the type of game your defense should shut down Pittsburgh's offense. If they don't, man, you're going to be in for a really rough football game. Now, today's show is made possible by Prize Picks. It is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. You simply pick 2 to 6 player stat projections, more than or less than, and watch the winnings roll in. You can mix and match NFL, college football. Maybe you want to mix and match some Ohio State, Michigan stat projections and some Bengals Steelers ones. You can do that on Prize Picks with plenty of ease. They also offer a reboot policy. Almost helped me out in my Thursday night slate because Joe Burrow got hurt. Even though if you had Burrow, your picks still stayed in play because of their injury insurance. They are the only DFS platform to offer it. My Thanksgiving picks this week. Give me Brian Robinson more than rushing yards against the Giants or against the Cowboys. Jordan Love more than passing yards against the shaky Lions secondary. He'll hit some chunk plays. And more than Jake Ferguson receiving yards against the shaky Commanders secondary. Go to prizepicks.com/CLNS and use code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100. Link will be in the comments section and the description of today's show. Again, folks, that's prizepicks.com/CLNS and use code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100. Number 2 key to victory, your offense is at a negative. That's not kind of talking in a double negative to a certain extent as well, but you just need to not be terrible out there. This is not a Joe Burrow-led team. Bengals would have been favored by probably 7, somewhere in that range if they had Burrow out there. You can move the ball with Jake Browning. What you need to avoid if you're Browning is you have to be a game manager. You cannot be out there going, I'm going to sling it 45 times with Browning the way you would maybe with Joe Burrow. You have to find a way to not make the big mistakes, not turn the football over, not give up easy points or bad field position stuff deep in your own territory against a great Steelers defense. They've been outgained in every football game. Don't be the one that changes that this week. Find a way to move the football, capitalize on your drives that get some good plays going, and don't give the Steelers points or the football or takeaways or whatever. Play it smart. You'll have a chance in the fourth quarter. Give me your score predictions. We'll get to mine at the end of today's video. But predict that score for me of Bengals versus Steelers. Sound off right now. Number 3, I badly need some Cordell Volson improvement here. He has been, mostly in pass protection, an absolute nightmare so far this season. He's actually been pretty solid as a run blocker, which you're not going to suddenly start feeding, Joe Mixon 25, 30 carries a game or anything like that. But I think it would be nice if you could find a way to get him going. Frankly, that entire left side of the offensive line has been a pretty big liability. Orlando Brown actually leads the NFL in pressures allowed this season. Meanwhile, Cordell Volson is tied for 4th in pressures allowed. Now, there's also one player who's played 11 games in that one. It's also troubling when the number 1 player has played 4 fewer games. That's Chandler Zavala. But Volson's gotten beat too much in pass protection. That left side's been rough. You have to protect Jake Browning. He is not Joe Burrow back there. The issue I run into here is of those who are like, just bench him. Is Cody Ford, Trey Hill, or Max Sharping the answer? I kind of don't think so. Look, the Bengals have done a good job of improving their offensive line. Yeah, Orlando Brown's pass protection numbers are not what you would have hoped they were going to be this season, but they've also had a lot of pass block snaps in general. He's been solid as a run blocker. He's not allowed that many sacks. At least they've mostly just been hurries that he's allowed, not sacks. So he's winning ugly to a certain extent. But I don't know what the solution is at left guard. You might need to make that an offseason priority again. So would you bench Cordell Volson, excuse me. Y for yes, N for no. Sound off in the comments section. Number 4, Jordan Battle plays well. I thought Battle had a pretty solid game against the Baltimore Ravens in a game in which very few players actually played well on defense. Battle was probably one of your top 3 guys against Baltimore. 56 snaps as he took over as the starting safety. Nick Scott played 10 of them. Scott had not played fewer than 40 snaps all but 2 games before this season. Battle got his most snaps by a significant margin. Purely defensively, I'm talking about a player who had 153 total this season, including those 56. So the vast majority right there. I liked what I saw. He was consistently around the football, wasn't targeted much in coverage, didn't allow big plays. Keep playing well against the Steelers team that I suspect is going to try to run the football against you pretty heavily. Now, if you want Bengals news and rumors, you've come to the right spot. Hit that sub button right now, youtube.com/BengalsTV. Final key to victory, especially with T. Higgins still kind of murky right now. You got to feed Jamar Chase. And that might be a lot of short stuff. That might be bubble screens and slants and tunnel screens and hot routes, whatever. You got to get Chase going. He's too good to not be getting 10 targets a game. That is what the Bengals absolutely must find a way to do. Jamar Chase is one of the premier wide receivers in the NFL. You're banged up on offense. You have got to force feed him. You have in fact had more games this year where Jamar Chase has had fewer than 10 targets than when he's had more than 10 targets. He's barely averaging 10 per game, and that includes the 19-target game that's carrying it. 9, 8, 15, 8, 19, 12, 12, 7, 6, 6. There's a pretty strong correlation, by the way, to wins and losses when targeting Jamar Chase. Give him the football, and have good things will happen. Before we go, my score prediction, I think it's going to be an ugly AFC North slugfest. I'm taking the under and the Bengals to win. Final score, 17-14.